What's up guys, Noah Sanford here. Really quick video for you guys today on a couple really easy modifications that you can make to your glide bait right out of the box to not only improve the functionality, how many hookups you get on it, but how many fish you actually get into the boat. So we're gonna go ahead and just jump right into this today. The first modification we're gonna be talking about is gonna be targeted to those of you who are wanting a little bit more action out of your bait than what you get out of the box. So before we talk about this modification, I am gonna say that most glide baits are designed to work really well out of the box, being able to just tie your line straight to the bait, throw it out there, chuck it around, and you're probably gonna catch some fish. Now, this modification is super simple and fast and easy, and it's going to allow the guys who want a little bit more action out of their bait to achieve a little bit more left to right, a little more free action out of their bait. It's gonna really free up that bait and allow it to glide a little more naturally in the water. This first modification is going to be adding some sort of attachment on to the line tie of your bait. There's a bunch of different ways to do it through trial and error, and also hearing about other people's failures and successes with this modification. I always choose to run a split ring. A lot of guys will tell you that it's better to run a snap, swivel, or a snap on your glide baits. There's a lot of reasons I don't do that. One is because snaps tend to wear out over time where split rings do not. So the problem with snaps is they're usually gonna be thinner wire than a split ring, and they're also designed to move open and closed, and hence the name snap into themselves. The problem with that is after you snap that bait in so many times, bait after bait after bait, snap it open, snap it closed, that wire wears out. I've heard of a lot of guys losing fish because they hook into something big and that wire either snaps off or that snap will come undone and open up and they'll lose their bait or their bait and their fish, even worse. And so even though it's a little bit longer of a process, maybe 30 seconds longer, to put a split ring on your bait as opposed to a snap, I really like it. And so all you have to do is get yourself some split rings. Doesn't really matter what you use. I prefer to go with the Owner Pro parts. These are the Hyperwire split rings right here. This is the size number 4. You get a pack of, I think 12, yeah, you get 12 of these things for like $6 or $7. They might even be like $5, I'm not sure, but they're super cheap. You get 12 of them in the pack. These are rated up to 50 pounds. So some guys might be looking at that and saying, oh, 50 pounds, it's not strong enough. Guys, we're catching maybe a 7 or 8 pound fish if we're lucky, right? 50 pounds is plenty of strength. And so what you wanna do is just get yourself a nice pair of split ring pliers. Just grab that split ring, use that little hook on the end of it, open it up, thread it on there, you're good to go. That simple modification, that simple, cheap, fast modification is going to free up your bait so much, because now you've got your line on that split ring, and instead of your line being tied straight to the bait, and the only way that line or that bait can move is from the line directly, that split ring is now going to allow your line to move freely, and your bait is just going to achieve a lot more of kind of a sporadic, open, more free action. So it's gonna give you, especially those guys who are using the chopped style swim baits like this KGB Shad right here, it's gonna allow those chop and those fast style swim baits that go left to right and dart and speed up, slow down. It's just gonna give them a little bit better action, and you're probably gonna get more bites over your competition, those guys who aren't doing that. So number 1, split ring, snap, whatever you wanna do. Like I said, I recommend the split ring. Add some on the front of your bait. You're gonna get a lot more action. You'll be shocked how much better your bait looks in the water. Let's go ahead and talk about the second modification also on this bait. So out of the box, this I believe is the gizzard or threadfin shad pattern. I don't remember which one. I think it's the gizzard shad, but unless you're using a glide bait that is a bright color or more of a raw or bone white color, it's really difficult to see those glide baits in the water, especially if you're fishing shallow, especially if your water and your lake is off color, if you don't have super clear water. So the first thing I like to do with my baits after adding something on there, if I want to give it more action, is to get some nail polish. This is some white gel nail polish. And I like to apply a little bit of that onto the top back, kind of right above the nose of that bait. This is one of the first ones I ever did, and so I obviously put way too much on there, to be honest. It's a little bit sloppy, but really you only need to put an inch or 2 of that white nail polish on your bait. The reason I don't like to use just regular paint is because I actually tried that once and it chips off and flakes off super easily. So get yourself some white nail polish from the Dollar Tree, or in my case, steal it out of your wife's makeup bag, and you'll be good to go. The next thing you want to do after you put that nail polish onto the top of that bait is just get some of that base coat and apply it onto the top, that shiny stuff, and that's just gonna kind of create a seal on there, so even if it does start to wear out or you chip it on some rocks or a dock or something, it's gonna stay on there. I've been fishing this one for a long time. You see it's got a couple tiny little chips in there, but it's doing all right. And so most of the time, what guys would worry about with this is most of the time they would think, oh, well, the fish is gonna see that white line on the bait. Guys, most of the time when you get a glide bait bite, that thing's gonna be high up in the water column and they're either coming up and hitting it from the bottom, or at most they're hitting it from the side. But those fish are never seeing a glide bait from the top, okay? 9 out of 10 fish, probably even more, are never hitting a glide bait from up above the bait. They're hitting it from the side or from underneath. And so if you have that white paint on there, you see what I'm saying? The fish can't even see it. So don't worry about that, but it makes it a lot easier when that bait's coming through the water for you to track your bait. And so you'd be amazed at how much easier it makes fishing a glide bait when you do this quick little modification on a bait that is a dark color on the back like this. It makes it way easier to see your bait, and it actually makes you fish the bait better and learn that bait quicker and know how to give it that right action because you can see what it's doing down there in the water. The last thing I want to talk about is if you're not going to be fishing shallow and you don't need that modification because you're going to be fishing that bait too deep. Now, how are you going to get that bait deep enough? You got to add some sort of weight, right? To those of you who want to take a slow sinking bait, or even if it's a regular sink glide bait and you just want it to sink a little bit faster and stay down there for a longer period of time in the correct depth range, my number one tip is to go ahead and get yourself some lead wire, okay? So I've got this hairline lead wire right here in the 0.03 diameter. You want to get yourself some of this lead wire. You can get 0.2, 0.4, it doesn't really matter. This is probably about the same diameter as maybe 20 or 25 pound test fluorocarbon, and you want to just put some wraps around the front hook, okay? Notice how I said the front hook and not both hooks. The reason you want to focus a majority of the weight with this lead wire on to the shaft of your front hook and not your rear hook is because when that bait starts to sink down further and further, your line is up here. So the further that bait sinks, the tighter of an angle or the sharper of an angle that line is coming off your bait. So when you're working that bait and it's going left to right, it's naturally gonna wanna blow out and nose up like that. And so it's not gonna get the right amount of action. So what I like to do is add most of my weight to that front hook, and that's gonna allow that bait to sink a little bit more nose down. So that way when I am working that bait in 10, 15, 20 feet, where it's normally gonna be in 4 or 5 feet at most. Once I get it down to that deeper depth range, since there's a little bit more weight on the front of that bait, the line is pulling that bait up at an angle, it's gonna even itself out and it's gonna swim nice and parallel and straight and natural looking. So you're gonna have to play around with the amount of wraps you put. You can see I've got 5 or 6 wraps on the front hook of this bait and nothing on the rear. If you really want that bait to sink fast, put a crap ton of wraps on the front hook, and just to level it out if you have to, you can put a few little wraps on the rear hook, but mainly focus that weight on the front hook. It's gonna allow that bait to work a lot better down in the water column. And once again, all 3 of these things are kind of things you're gonna have to experiment with on your own, but hopefully this gives you an idea of where to go depending on if you want more action out of your bait, if you wanna be able to see your bait better, or if you want that bait to sink a little bit faster and work in a deeper depth range. So I'm no expert on swim bait fishing. This is just kind of what I've learned in my time doing it through trial and error. So hopefully this takes some of the growing pains out of your guys' experience and makes you catch fish more often and easier on these swim baits. So appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed to the channel yet. Hit that like button. My name's Noah Sanford. We'll see you guys out on the water.